Movies about traveling back in time to change a wrong, they're not new. And now we get Timecut that's on Netflix. It's very similar to Prime Video's Totally Killer. Funny enough though, even though this is releasing after that other film, this was made before it. So is this the superior flashback time travel slasher? A teenage girl travels back to 2003 to stop a serial killer from murdering her sister. All right, so we've got the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think our good is gonna be short. For me, the soundtrack.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's pretty good.
I really enjoyed the soundtrack because it's early 2000s songs. I mean, they work. You have Vanessa Carlton. I don't know. They all
the 90s cues that are in there.
Yeah, that really worked for me.
Okay, so I think it's 90 minutes long, so that's a good runtime for a slasher horror film. So it didn't try to outstay what is generally what is known to be the good runtime for this type of movie.
We're really reaching.
Oh man, I was going to say it also has 90s, not 90s, 2000 nostalgia.
Yes,
and I like those moments because it's one of those movies we can say, "Hey, I know that reference."
Yeah, for me also, which I don't appreciate this in all films, but in this one I kind of liked it because it was the modern influence of social messaging. Okay. So like bullying now in today, that's frowned upon.
Yeah.
Back in the early 2000s, that was kind of the norm. And so you have that infusing in there as our character goes from current time back. Also, geek culture is cool.
Oh, yes. That was a really cool thing. Yeah. I totally forgot to put that in there. Yeah, that is actually a good positive, yeah. That you be geek or nerdy now is the cool thing. And back then it was not.
That's all the good I have.
That's all the good I have.
Okay, so the bad. The story, it is overly obvious. This is supposed to be a slasher with, I guess, an air of mystery to it because the character that we see, the slasher himself, has a mask on, right? So we don't know who it is, but we do.
If you've seen Totally Killer, as a reference, like you mentioned earlier, that was made before. The problem with that is that because they released Totally Killer earlier, last year in fact, this one is 10 times worse than Totally Killer was. And for me, Totally Killer was fun, but not great. So if you're looking at bars that you're setting, this one doesn't kind of take the boxes of even the most simple factors that you need in for a horror teen slasher movie, which this isn't.
This is very family friendly.
Oh, yeah.
I was shocked. There is almost zero blood. All of the kills, they either happen off camera or the camera cuts right before something happens.
Yeah, it alludes to it greatly pretty much all the time. And every time you think you're going to get something that might be fun, you've got to imagine it because they've cut to either the person's been dead, even then they're not showing us any sort of killing, and even then when there's some sort of chase, it doesn't make sense. But we'll get to that because that for me is in the ugly.
Oh, okay. Well, see, and I say, I don't want people to think that the lack of violence, that's necessarily a bad thing. Because it's not, this is a slasher, so it does need to have the violence there. But the problem was that there wasn't any tension or anxiety that was created because we kept cutting away from things and never really had this really buildup. Everything started and then it just stopped.
Another thing that was bad for me, and I think that's the dialogue. It's felt like it was written by adults who lived in the 2000s, but forgot what it was like to live and speak in the 2000s. So now they're trying to write it for an audience that isn't the right audience, because this is pitched at teens, but those teens would, if it's the right demographic, it would be anywhere between late 20s to early 40s. So you have a large demographic of people that are watching for nostalgia, but you're getting all the dialogue wrong for both.
Yeah, you're missing it completely on both ends. Yeah.
So you want to move on to the ugly?
I have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So for me, the story, it is not compelling at all. It has asked us to become invested into characters just because they might become victims.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned before, there's none of that tension that setup, that you feel like actual peril for these people, because I didn't really feel anything to them.
No. And part of that is, like I was mentioning, is how this movie has been marketed. Netflix's actual genre for this movie, it classifies it as horror, thriller, sci-fi movie. It has a MacGuffin that is sci-fi, that is really stupid and feels like it. Primer does a job, way better than that, and had probably way less of a budget. The thriller part, there isn't anything thriller-ish. Even when they start doing sequences, they don't make any sense. And here's one of the biggest problems of the movie. You can have a killer with superpowers, but it's never addressed. And what I mean by superpowers, a killer can be standing in a room on top of an escalator in an empty mall, and then our characters are running down an escalator, and they will appear at the bottom, like in a second, and then never address that. If they'd used the MacGuffin to address that was a thing, I thought the movie would have been a much cleverer movie. Because then at least we would have them playing with the MacGuffin in a weird, timey-wimey way. But that isn't the thing.
Well, they couldn't because of the way that they established the MacGuffin.
Exactly.
And they made it so big and clunky, literally big and clunky.
It's so stupid because when you have a MacGuffin like this, it's so easy to write it in to make it do what you need it. That's the whole point of the MacGuffin like this.
Yeah.
But when you basically write yourself into a corner, now they don't know what to do, so they have to write your character to be more interesting, write the killer to be more interesting than it is. And then you expect your audience just to kind of blink and maybe yawn and scroll on their phone just so that maybe they can look and go, oh, he was there all the time. Did I miss something? Yes, you did.
I found the lack of suspense distracting.
Yes.
That they have setups where our characters are put into unlikely situations. But that's okay, because in a lot of horror movies, we have unlikely situations. The characters don't know what genre they're in, right? So, okay, you know, a serial killer or a slasher, whatever, somebody who's killing people is on the loose, and so you're just wildly unaware of your surroundings. Fine. I'm willing to buy that because that's how most horror movies work. But as we start to build up a little bit and build up a little bit more, they just release all of that tension for the scene change.
Yeah.
Or the resolution to that. And no, let me feel this terror for a character. Let me feel like there's actually something that could happen to them. Also, I'm sorry, the acting is just not great either.
Not great.
And I think a lot of that comes to the direction.
Yeah, direction and dialogue.
Yeah, because I have seen some of these actors in other things.
Yes.
Netflix, other Netflix, like Ginny and Georgia and Lock and Key.
Yeah.
We've seen some of these characters in there, or at least the actors in there, and they're fine for what those shows are. But this one, yeah, you're right. The dialogue was terrible. Overall, Timecut is ineffective at delivering chills, comedy, or horror. While the soundtrack is great and the modern sensibilities infused within the storytelling are effective, the entire plot is predictable, filled with lackluster characters and a disturbing lack of suspense or violence. This is a very watered-down story that plays on nostalgic tropes but fails to create a compelling or memorable tale. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and surprisingly little violence. I give Timecut 1.5 out of 5 couches. So what's your favorite lesser-known time travel film? If you've never seen Primer, you certainly need to put that gem on your list. But also, Safety Not Guaranteed, that is a wonderful one to see too. Mm-hmm. I would love to hear, though, what you like in the comments below.
12 Monkeys.
Ooh, that's a good one. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is my friend Ruben from the Ruby Tuesday. Thanks for couching with us.